for Black home buying and wealth creation. A major shift took place in the mid-90s, which is, some people are referring to it as reverse redlining, using the same perception of risk, perceiving Black communities as high risk, using that perception instead of denying loans to those communities. Lenders began to say, well, wait a minute, we can make money from this. Let's charge higher interest. And so the perception of risk was used to justify predatory practices of aggressively marketing high-cost loans to Black communities. Of course, the result of that is the foreclosure crisis, which caused a massive economic problem in the whole country, led to unprecedented defaults, foreclosure, abandonment, blight, and that blight led to loss of housing value and price, and then the loss of tax base, property tax base for the community, for Cuyahoga County. Last two bullet points, in a tragic irony, I find it to be a tragic irony, the same industry which caused massive devaluation is now reluctant to make loans on the low-priced homes. And it's not, and I should be clear, I'm not saying that a board of a bank somewhere sat and made a decision, we're not going to make loans in that community. It's much more nuanced than that. Its loan officers are paid by commission. And if they're paid by commission, where would they prefer to make a loan? A $45,000 loan on the east side of Cleveland, or a $50,000 loan in Maple Heights, or a $250,000 loan in Moreland Hills. So it's not necessarily an intentional thing, but the result is that the lending industry is not providing credit that's needed in the same areas which have been devalued. And then, of course, the final irony, tragedy to this, is that these same low prices are attracting investors from Utah, Texas, California, Florida, Israel, France, England, you name it, because they're attracted to that $45,000 house on the east side of Cleveland. The rents on that house are not $45,000 rents. They're the $80,000 rents that that house had back in 2005. So when the home prices dropped due to the foreclosure crisis, rents did not. That's attracting investors who see this as an incredible opportunity. And we're going to talk about that more when we get into this. I'm going to go to actually the next one, page 7. I want to talk also, just this is still background, but I think it's worth putting on the record. Disinvestment, what does that do? From redlining and reverse redlining both has caused dramatic reductions in housing value in majority Black communities. Access to fair home purchase and home repair mortgages continues to undermine the ability of those communities to recover lost value. The loss of housing value in Black communities directly impacts property tax revenue that supports schools, safety forces, social services provided by counties and municipal government. Last thing I wanted to note, and there is a study that was done by my former employer, Western Reserve Land Conservancy, in 2014, which documented that the loss of value in parts of Cuyahoga County actually caused a shift of tax burden to outer suburbs and to the predominantly white communities. I thought that was actually a very important study that was done. So now moving on to going to page 10, it's worth noting on a national level, I thought this was interesting, a report from the Pew Charitable Trust looking at Black families falling further behind in home ownership as a national trend. I just think that's worth noting as background to this report. I'm going on to page 12. Now here's a positive finding. This was a surprise to me. This was not something I expected, but the number of applications from Black borrowers increased 78%. The number of loans made to Black borrowers increased 76%. This is countywide. Number of lenders making loans to Black borrowers increased 40%. Total dollars increased 142%, and the average loan amount to Black borrowers increased 38%. That's all very good news. But I'm moving on now to page 14. If you look a little deeper, though, it's not, I mean, it's a good sign, but the question is success ultimately because individual Black borrowers are able to get loans? What about their communities? And if you look at this slide, which shows where are the Black borrowers located who are able to get loans, now the largest is in the east inner suburbs, which is a little bit of a mix. It's about half African American and half white. But if you look at the third bar in the middle, this is the area that's the largest concentration of African-American population, 80%, east side of Cleveland, and there's only 399 loans. Outer suburbs had significantly more than that. So on one hand, it is a very good sign that loans to black borrowers are increasing, but it's still, the question is what's happening with the communities. If we want to see ultimately success, I think the majority black communities have to be also participating more. Going on to, this is, hold on a second, where am I? I'm at page 15. High-priced loans. And this is another thing I discovered that I wasn't, I had a suspicion about it, but this was the first year, and I've been looking at this data for about 6 years. This is the first year I actually looked at this to document the higher-priced loans. I want to point out that the federal government has two definitions. They have a definition for high-cost loans, which is, I believe, is 6 or 6.5% above the average rate, and then higher priced are 1.5% above. So I was looking at, by the way, there's very few loans in Cuyahoga County that were the 6% or more above the average rate. But there were a significant number in the 1.5% or higher. And you can see the difference between those loans going to black borrowers versus white borrowers. And I have more on this. I'm going to, this is the same thing, but looking at where are those higher priced loans by geography. And of course here, this is what we would expect to see, is that the east side of Cleveland with 80% black population has the largest share of the higher priced home mortgage purchase loans. By the way, if you're wondering, could I do this also for home repair loans? Yes, I could. I could do it for refinance loans. The truth is, it's a question of time and the county's money. I could probably keep this. There's a lot that could be done here, and in fact, I will be open to, if there are requests for me to try to tweak this, I'd certainly be open to that. Again, we have to consider the amount of time involved in getting this to county council. Going to move on. I'm just moving to, actually I'm moving on to, hold on a second, I think I went too far. No, I actually already talked about that, sorry, I'm losing my track here. I'm skipping ahead. This is rejection rates, not a surprise, rejection rates are higher for blacks. I'm gonna go on to what I think, I may have shown this before, but I think this is unique. I say that in that many people have done home mortgage lending research over the last decades, including me back in 1995, but I think I'm one of the only people that's done this, which is to look at home sales, arm's length home sales, and compare that to mortgages and see what's happening. So if you look at the red bars are the 1 to 3 family arm's length sales, the green bars are the 1 to 4 family loans, and by the way, 99% of all loans are 1 to 2 family, so it's statistically insignificant between 3 and 4. But notice that, you know, there's no one-to-one match anywhere. There's no place in the county where every sale of a home had a mortgage associated with it. But if you look at the outer suburbs, you have a very high percent, and also west inner suburbs and the west side reasonably, well, less so. But where you really get the difference is when you're looking at the east side of Cleveland, that there were 4,100 arm's length sales. These are not sales between partners. They're not gifts between family members. They're not transfers between banks and bank and regulatory agencies. These are arm's length transactions between unrelated people. And notice the median sale price of $45,000. That means there were a lot of home sales on the east side of Cleveland in 2021 that represented affordable home ownership opportunities, but there were only 900 mortgage loans made. And the note at the bottom, what this suggests to me, not that there couldn't be other reasons for this, but the two that jump out at me are, one, a high degree of investor activity, where investors are paying cash for the $40,000 home. And I already laid out why would they do that? Because of the differential between the rent they can collect. It's a relatively small price, and in 5 or 6 years, they could probably recover their cost on that. The second thing that's worth noting is a missed opportunity for affordable home ownership, and a significant unmet mortgage need. I maybe spent a little too much time on this, but I thought it was important to talk about this. Home repair loans, countywide, by region. Notice the loans are the blue bars. The red is the percent of African American population in the 5 regions. So what you have is the access to home improvement loans tends to decrease as a percent of African American population increases. And again, there could be lots of reasons for it, and I'm not digging into what they all are, but I do think it's worth noting just as an issue particularly on the east side of Cleveland and to a lesser extent the east inner suburbs. Please. Oh, you were trying to get my attention. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Worth noting that the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, again, my former employer, did a very important study in 2015 looking at every property in the city of Cleveland and doing a ranking of them, A, B, C, D, F, in their condition. The highest number of C-rated properties was the east side. It was 3 to 4 times the number of C-rated properties on the west side. The east side has the largest home repair need of any part of the city of Cleveland. Now, there isn't a similar survey done for the whole county, but it suggests that there is a significant home repair need in the east side of Cleveland, and it's an unmet need based on this chart. Let me just tell you where I'm jumping to. Hold on a second. 23. I just wanted to show this as an example. This is the kind of detail that I provided for those top 15 rankings. We don't have time to go through them all, but you have it in the information you've been provided. This one is home purchase countywide. So you can see Cross Country Mortgage, an independent mortgage company, is the top. Huntington is second. Rocket Mortgage, and then several independent, a whole grouping of independent mortgage lenders. Fifth Third, Bank of America, and Key Bank are lower. Notice I inserted something new into this table that I didn't have in the previous years I've done this, and that is the 4th or 5th column over to the right, which is what was the percent of higher priced loans that these lenders were included in the mortgages that they made. What I also did is I repeated this exact same table, and I'm going to go to it next. I just sorted the data differently. This one is sorted by the percent of high-priced loans. So you can see that amongst the top 15 who made home purchase loans to black borrowers, this, if I didn't already say that, this is to black borrowers specifically, you can see the grouping of a lot of independent. Dollar Bank is not, they're a mainstream bank, but a lot of these are smaller, not sure smaller is the right word, but they are more independent. They're not depository banks. Maybe that's the easier way to say it. Whereas Huntington, Fifth Third, Bank of America, Key Bank are depository banks, and they're amongst the ones that had community benefits agreements. So, I noted that Huntington Bank's 11% is a little on the high side, although if you put it in context with those other independent mortgage companies, it's not that bad, although we could come back to that and talk to them about that if you want. I'm jumping quite a bit ahead because I'm jumping through all these tables that show the top 15 because if we do that, we will be here a long time. I'm going to go to, hold on. Sorry, 44. 44 begins the section where we're focusing on banks with community benefits agreements. This page just shows you what is that universe of banks. Now, and then by the way, these are the ones that I could find from researching them. It's possible that some bank is watching this right now and saying, wait a minute, we got a community benefits agreement and he didn't include it. I'll apologize and say I'd be happy to include it. But from my knowledge, the agreements are these. The older agreements that go back to 2016 and 2017 are Fifth Third. These are multi-state agreements, $32 billion, Key Bank $16.5 billion, Huntington $16.1 billion. Fifth Third's has ended. Key Bank's and Huntington's has been extended. Then there are 4 relatively newer. I think there's an announcement that they have expanded it. I just looked this up. I'm 99.9%. I'll leave that tiny little percent that I'm wrong. That I just found this, that they did announce an expansion to another $40 billion for their multi-state community benefits agreement. The four recent ones are basically 2021 Chase Bank, PNC 2022, Bank of America 2022, and U.S. Bank just in 2023, very recently. Well, it was announced in May of 2022. It's effective starting, we'll start collecting data in 2023. But notice that the most recent data for this report is 2021 bank lending data. And if I didn't say this already, it's sort of a unique aspect of the federal mortgage lending data that it's usually about a year behind by the time we get it. So now, on one hand, you could say, well, is it really relevant to look at those four new banks because their agreements are all new? And I would say yes, because every lender has some obligation under existing federal laws and regulations to meet credit needs of their communities. And so in other words, you don't have to have, we as a county don't have to expect a bank to have a CBA agreement or commitment. We can expect them to be meeting credit needs even without that. So to me, it's relevant to be looking at all seven. And this is where, and then it's just worth noting that this is unique because KeyBank has, in addition to their national, I move to the next slide, 45. In addition to their multi-state CBA agreement, they have the agreement with Cuyahoga County, which began almost exactly 3 years ago. As April 1st, it will be, and it ends in approximately 1 year. Unlike the multi-state CBA agreements, it doesn't have a total dollar target amount, and it doesn't really have much in the way of target dollar lending or even number of target loans. It does have 13 commitments, which we've talked about before, and it says they will use their best efforts to meet those. Now, getting into probably the most important part of this is and I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I want to draw your attention to at least a few of them. This is 46. These are the CBA lenders over a 6-year period. This is home purchase lending, and I'm going to 47. So here's Cuyahoga County. And what stands out almost immediately is think again about the fact that 3 lenders entered into an agreement 6 years ago and said, we're going to do better. And they pledged billions of dollars to do that. And the green line is Huntington. The blue line right under it is Fifth Third. The red line mixed in the bottom is KeyBank. And so Huntington is the only one that jumps out at like, well, 6 years ago they said they were going to do something better, and they really did it. Now, to be fair to KeyBank, notice they did increase. This is countywide still. They did increase their lending countywide from 116 loans to 441, so that's noteworthy. Fifth Third is significantly disappointing in that they started the 6-year period with 705 loans, ended with 466. The other lenders who are, again, fairly new, there's not a lot of movement. It's fairly flat. I'm just going to go on. So that's Cuyahoga. Here's Cleveland. Very similar pattern. KeyBank does have some improvement again. This is east side of Cleveland next. I'm on page 49 now. And here there is still some improvement, but it's less. This is the east inner suburbs. Again, noting that across all 4 of these geographies, Huntington stands out. The other lenders, while they're either flat or there's some improvement. And again, to give credit to KeyBank, they made some improvement here over the 6 years in home mortgage lending. It's just, well, keep going. Home repair lending. This is page 52, Cuyahoga. Now here's where KeyBank was the leading home repair lender in Cuyahoga County. And while they did come up a little in this last year, their home repair lending has declined significantly overall. Huntington's dramatically increased, like a six-fold increase from 94 to 628. Fifth Third, which is the darker blue line. Now I'm looking at this, and I guess you could say, gee, couldn't he have distinguished the blues a little better? The darker blue is Fifth Third, which is, and they started around 54 and they ended with 101 countywide. That is an increase of home repair lending countywide for Fifth Third, but as you'll see as we go on, those loans seem to be mostly and predominantly white communities. Because if we get to Cleveland, east side of Cleveland and these eastern suburbs, their lending is lower. And I might as well go to those right now. Cleveland, here's interesting here, we do have, although KeyBank dropped, they did come up enough to be matching, they matched Huntington on this at about 89, 86 loans there. The drop, just something to note, why is there a drop in 2020? I think it's because, with home repair in particular, that with COVID-19, remember 2020 was the first year of COVID. People are very worried about COVID. They don't want contractors in their house. They don't want people coming in to do estimates and inspections. The number of home repair applications across the board in Cuyahoga did decline, and I think that could be why it could be one reason why KeyBank's numbers dropped in 2020. But even if you look at where they've come back to in 2021, it's still below where they started 2016. Looking at, and also notice that Fifth Third, I said they are the darker blue line. There's no increase in Fifth Third's home repair lending throughout the 6 years here when you get to the city of Cleveland. And if I jump now to the east side of Cleveland on page 54, it's basically the same thing for Fifth Third. They're down near the bottom. I think it says they made 2 or 3 loans at the beginning of the period, maybe 1 or 2 loans at the end of the period. KeyBank generally continued to drop, although you'll notice it did come back up in 2021. This is an area where Huntington actually has dropped some. And generally, in most of what we're going to look at, Huntington has actually done quite well over the entire 6-year period. This is one area where it's worth having a conversation about them as to why did their loans drop somewhat in the east side of Cleveland. On the eastern suburbs, Huntington is the leader in the most recent year on home repair. KeyBank is only slightly below them. You'll notice that while they dropped, they did come back up in 2021. The other lenders are all grouped. Their performance is all pretty flat at the bottom. Loans, 50,000 or less, small dollar loans. I'm going to go to page 57. Nobody's doing great here. This is an area of unmet need that no lender is really setting some benchmark. Huntington has set, for a lot of what they're doing, they've set benchmarks. Although you could argue that because they're still the highest here, that even though no one's numbers seem to be outstanding, Huntington is still a leader. Done 3 times as many small dollar loans as the others. Looks like KeyBank did just 5 in the last year. Then if you look at Cleveland, it's the same pattern. Very few loans, 50,000 or less in Cleveland, except for Huntington. East side of Cleveland, same pattern. And then east inner suburbs. Now here, Huntington dropped. Another, again, area where Huntington's performance dropped somewhat. Although overall, as I said, they seem to be setting the benchmark for the most part, but in this area, they're not. And I'm going to keep going on. Please go ahead. I'm going back. Yeah.
Just quickly, I'm wondering if 2021, if there's such a dramatic drop looking at Huntington in the east inner suburbs, it just occurred to me that possibly there's some question about supply. And I just wanted to know if that was...
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think it's worth...
if valuations went up, then we would have fewer loans below 50,000 because there were fewer houses.
Yes. No, actually, I do think that's,
I think was in 20.
well, that's true, although more pertinent might be what were the actual median sale prices in these communities. And I'm glad you brought it up because I was thinking, I was almost tempted to put something in here about that. In fact, actually, I think I might have. Oh, actually, I do. There's a little note there that says recent higher median sale prices in the east inner suburbs explain part of this.
I should have read.
Well, and I should have noted it too. I wrote it, so I should have remembered it. But as noted earlier, Fairway Independent made 27 loans in this category, and the median prices in the East Cleveland, Euclid, Garfield, Maple Heights, and Warrensville have still not come back to where they were. They've not fully recovered. So there's a mix here. In some of the east inner suburbs, South Euclid is an example, where the prices are actually significantly higher than they used to be. And Cleveland Heights might be one. I off the top of my head, I don't remember. But there are a handful of east inner ring suburbs that have not fully recovered, and Maple Heights, Garfield, Warrensville, Euclid, and East Cleveland are certainly one. So it's a mix in responding to what you're saying. Mayor.
I have to ask, we had the highest home appreciation in the county, 29%.
From what period?
In the last 12 months. So the average home price is $115 in Maple Heights. When I started in 2016, it was $37,001. So you're qualify that question, that comment you just made. Not fully recovering.
And I have just recently completed research on median home sale prices for every municipality in the Cleveland neighborhood, and I don't have it here in front of me, but I used median home sale prices, not the averages, and why don't I share that with you and we have a conversation? And because there are several different things. There's median versus average. Then there's also looking at the sale prices versus a county's appraisal, either the 6-year or the 3-year. I tend to use only the medians, but let's leave open a question about that I may be needing to look at that. And I will email, in fact, if you want me, do you want me to email to everybody in the group? Yeah, because I've cited some of these median sale prices, but I should get everybody that then. There was no front page plain dealer article about it. But why don't I get it to everybody?
I challenge you because I really spent a lot of time on this.
Well,
In the city, I spent a lot of time just to understand what's happening in real estate. That's our biggest asset.
Sure.
We have over 9,000 housing units. We're not a commercial industrial. We're a neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time on this. So I'd love to see, maybe there's a flaw in what we're looking at, myself and my housing department, where the disconnect is and reconcile that.
Yeah, the data that I use comes from the fiscal office. They give it to Case Western. Case Western then gets it to me. And yes, we could could be a mistake somewhere. And I'm willing to talk to you about it and share it with everybody.
Thank you.
So that we can analyze that. Because in fact, that might be, the degree of recovery of all communities in Cuyahoga County is connected to the things we're talking about, the access to home purchase mortgages, the access to home repair mortgages. So it is another important benchmark. I'll commit to getting it to everybody within 24 hours. Quickly.
Madam Chair,
No, I think quickly makes sense.
Well, we're still thinking about it.
No, and I have it.
Top of mind, other things get in the way.
Yeah.
Mayor?
just one more
Yes,
comment,
sure.
and this is something that you mentioned earlier, and it's not that I'm certainly not caping for the banks right now, but I did want to sort of have a better understanding maybe, or at least ask the question, sort of how much is maybe supply related to this low number of home purchase loans. I think obviously the points you made about the incentives that people have to make low dollar loans is a factor, but also the what you mentioned earlier about either cash buyers or like investor buyers or hard money loans might have an impact. And so the only reason I bring it up at all is because I'd like to have a better understanding of how much is maybe the doing of these banks versus the external forces that they may have less to do with.
And to be fair to the lenders, in 5 years' time, I don't think this 50,000 level would be more appropriate. It is still appropriate on the east side of Cleveland for sure, and it is appropriate, subject to our further discussion. It seems to be still appropriate in some, well, certainly probably East Cleveland. But you're right, as communities in Cuyahoga County recover, and they are all moving upward, even the hardest hit east side of Cleveland neighborhoods, as that happens, eventually we won't be talking about 50,000. We might still talk about 75. And to be honest about it, if I had this to do all over again, going back 6 years, maybe 50 was the wrong number. I should have picked 75. And I didn't think about it. And now it's sort of hard to go back, although going forward, I may have to do something different. Maybe it's not 50. But I think you raised a really good point, you both have, and I will share with you, and we can talk at a future meeting if you want even about the home sale research. I'd love to have a group bounce around ideas on that with me.
Right.
Yes, please.
So I think a couple of things, just wanted to chime in here. At CHN, we have a nonprofit mortgage company. It's a CDFI called CHN Housing Capital. I think most of you know that. And, we saw a significant amount of our borrowers that pre-qualified not be able to find inventory that was available, right? Part of that was the competitiveness of the market. We particularly saw it in areas that had kind of, I could say, below median home values, right? We also saw a number that fell out once they had done their, once they had signed their purchase agreement because of the asset quality of the home. So I think that, in kind of considering what we're looking at here in 2021, I think there is an adjustment we need to account for related to the housing market itself in terms of the competitiveness for sales. That's one piece I would add. I think a second piece I would add as we look at our home repair activities, which we look at weatherization as home repair activities. It's the biggest home weatherization program in the state. We saw a significant decline in 2020 and 2021 of people wanting home repairs, as well as people being able to gain access to contractors, right? There was the people wanting people in their homes, or like businesses even to be able to go into homes. And then there was also, I think then there was also like being able to get contractors to do it, because there were less contractors in 2021 doing the business than in 2019. So I think I'm not saying any of that to like push on your data, but what I'm saying is I do think that when we see 2022, that will give us the best comparison to the before times. That'll say, okay, what did we see? 2020, 2021 shouldn't just be giveaways, but I think it's 2022 is, I think, where you'll see more normalcy, at least on the home repair side.
I think you could be right about that, and I'm sort of looking forward to, as soon as the 22 data comes out, being able to look at it. So I'm going to, this was 50,000 or below. I wanted to take a quick look at the low to moderate income borrowers. This is countywide. Huntington increased. Fifth Third is the dark blue line, decreased. Key Bank, the red line, went from 35 to 105, so they actually did increase in terms of low to mod. But the level of where they're at is, of course, only about a third of what Huntington did. I'm going to, now this is I think the last one I'm going to be looking at. This is just to black borrowers wherever they might have been in Cuyahoga County. Huntington, significant increase. The others are fairly low. I'm looking for Key Bank. Key Bank was, again, this is home purchase. This is only home purchase, not refi or home repair. It looks like Key Bank did 8 or 9 loans in 2016. They did 50 to black borrowers in 2021. Huntington went from 97 to 177. So as I've said before, in most of these analyses, Huntington does tend to set the benchmark. One last thing, maybe, I don't know if I've already talked about it. I don't think I did, so let's quickly talk about it. Looking at deposits, what jumps out is Key Bank is the leader in deposits. 25 billion. You have to add 3 zeros to those numbers. So it's 25 billion. They have a 33% market share of all deposits in Cuyahoga County. Now, this is individual bank accounts, business bank accounts, and of course, because of the contract with the county, they have the county's government funds. And what is that? In turn, that's citizens, taxpayers' money. So then what I've done is I've ranked these top 13 banks. By the way, there were about 26 banks, 26 to 29, who were depository banks, Cuyahoga County. This represents 99% of all the deposits, these 13. Over to the far right, then I have what was the percent of the deposits they reloaned back into the county. The average deposits loaned by these 13 banks is 4.73%. KeyBank is 1.93, PNC is 2.29. So KeyBank and PNC, being the largest holders of deposits, actually reloaned the lowest percent of the money back into the community. The biggest ones, if you look at Huntington, is 8%, Third Federal is 10%, Fifth Third is 7%, Chase is 6%, U.S. Bank is right around the average at 4%. There's a couple of outliers. First Federal of Lakewood, 24%, and First National Bank of PA is 32%. Honestly, I don't have an answer for that right at the moment as to why is that. They're reloaning a large share of their deposits, and I don't know the explanation for that. So I'm anticipating that somebody surely to ask me, and I'm just going to tell you I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess I think it's worth. Actually, I know somebody that could be asked. There's a consultant who used to work for KeyBank, and I think some of the members of this committee actually. I won't say his name right now, but somebody that we could actually tap into his expertise. Yeah. Yeah.
When we do that, when we look at that, I just want to make sure that we're taking a look at how these banks are marketing their services to people here locally. I mean, it might be just, First National Bank of PA might just have, done a marketing campaign, and that's why they've,
Yeah.
so the large share, it's still a relatively small amount of dollars.
Yeah, it's a share of their deposits. It's not necessarily the same as saying what is their share of the mortgage lending, but no, it's still a good point.
So could we go back so we see these large deposits by the top 5 banks on this list. How much of of those deposits are from Cuyahoga County?
Well, these would these are all considered. Let me back up a step and say every bank is required to report their deposits to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC. These should be deposits they are claiming are coming from Cuyahoga County. They're held by one of their subsidiary or branches in Cuyahoga County. Now, KeyBank has said, and they've said this more than once because this has been shown to them before, they've said, well, this is inaccurate because, they don't use the word inaccurate. They'll say it's misleading because that $25 billion includes a lot of our corporate deposits because we are home-based in Cuyahoga County. Now, the way I look at it is that may be true, but this is what they reported to the FDIC. We can't go on anything other than what they reported to the FDIC. So regardless of where they're getting those resources from, they're holding those resources. They're holding those deposits. And it seems to me that's how we should look at it, that they have the largest share of deposits. I'm sure that somebody from KeyBank is probably listening right now, and
They are.
yeah, and I'm pointing it out that in their defense they have raised that, although I think still there's a counter to that, which is that's fine, but that's what well, here's one more thing. Here's the last slide. Cranes headline. Is KeyBank disappointed to see this headline? They continue to dominate the market share of deposits? I don't think so. So if you want to be the big player and hold the market share, largest market share, and dominate the market in deposits and get credit for that, well, then I think there's a corresponding obligation to be, that you could be expected to be meeting credit needs in Cuyahoga County. And it's not that KeyBank, so at the bottom line is that KeyBank they weren't the worst bank in Cuyahoga County by any means. I think the difference is that given that they have these sizable deposits, given they have 2 community benefits agreements, one multi-state nationally and one with the county, and 3, they're the hometown bank. I just think more could have been expected of KeyBank when you compare them to Huntington. And yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Just a real quick question. I can imagine a variety of good reasons, like, for them not to provide this kind of information, but when they mentioned that this was misleading, did they give any indication as to what a more realistic number is?
What they said was that it was because of these corporate deposits, which I wasn't sure what the definition of that was, but money that's held by the bank locally within Cuyahoga County that they're calling corporate deposits. The thing is, they haven't provided any breakdown that would give us any way to look at that. I guess we could ask for that.
Okay.
But again, I'm not sure even if we ask for it, is that going to change the fact that they are holding those resources?
When they say corporate, I'm assuming they mean their own deposits.
Perhaps. I don't know. Yes, please.
In the banking world, it's routine that, banks will allocate deposits for a number of different factors within certain geographies, right? And so, and when a bank is headquartered in a particular city, right, there's most oftentimes you're going to see a significant amount of deposits that are even from outside of that, from that geography, tagged to that corporate headquarters, right? So the important thing to understand more specifically is, what really is generated from Cuyahoga than from beyond, because technically, right, if we're looking at, of course, we're Cuyahoga County, right? But as a bank who's operating in, 15 or 16 states now, that if from a retail perspective that KeyBank is, and if it's PNC or Fifth Third, whomever, right, they're going to think about also their obligations for, those territories from which those deposits originated, right? So, if those deposits originated somewhere other than Cuyahoga County, they're going to also need to be thinking about how they deploy those deposits. Now,
So, Kevin, in addition, though, if you're saying that 25 billion is substantially overstated for this market because of their corporate deposits, then tell us what your base deposit from entities that belong here are. We're more than happy to accept a lower number and have you produce on that number. So defending your position is fine if you can give us those numbers. If you don't want to give us those numbers, then you currently are not producing what we hope a hometown lender will do.
There is another way to look at it. I'm sorry, go ahead. It just occurred to me as you were talking that if we look at this list of deposits, and let's say the KeyBank number 25 million is misrepresented, what is it likely to be? Is it likely to be the 10 billion PNC number? Is it likely to be the 8 billion Huntington number or the 4 billion Fifth Third number? It's likely to be somewhere in there. And notice that those banks, even with those lower numbers, I would say Huntington's look at the numbers of the loans made by Huntington. That's the next to their last column on the right. 706 million, again, adding the 3 zeros, is what Huntington made. KeyBank made 488 million. Even if you took KeyBank's deposits down to Huntington's level, there'd still be something, I don't know, I would still say we could expect more.
And that's, when I was looking at, I'm sorry. Yeah, I went that, and just following up on kind of what I was saying before, I mean, looking at that overall deployed kind of mortgage balance to me is an absolute apples to apples, and seeing what those volumes are, and I think a key difference when you think of like a third federal versus a key bank, for example, is that a primary driver of the overall profitability of the bank lies in mortgage lending versus for Key where it's not an overall driver of profitability. I'm just giving more context, not justifying anything. The other piece though is Huntington, right? Like their mortgage platform works a lot more with partners, right? So like for example, they were the first investor in our mortgage company, right? So what you're seeing, I think, in the Huntington numbers is a mortgage platform that has kind of leveraged other mortgage lenders such as CHN Housing Capital to allow for them to get to the level they are, which is a positive thing, right?
Well, we all believe in partnerships or we wouldn't be at this table today. That's part of what an activist says when they step out from their secure homes or from a mayor's office. They're saying there's got to be a better way to do something in addition to what has historically been done. And so the folks we collectively represent at this committee and on county council want to see a little bit more. So you have done lending. Key is who we focus on, or we're about to end our focus on them and begin to talk to other lenders as our next stage. But what we want to see is, for whatever level of engagement you have, if you're based in this marketplace and you are receiving money in deposits, we'd like to see the residents of Cuyahoga County receive better opportunities for lending that will not be the kind of lending that breaks them. It will help them build wealth and have better futures for themselves and for their families. Because for the average American, outside of their pension fund, owning a home, reinvesting in it, and helping its value to appreciate over time is how they build wealth. And so at Cuyahoga County, we want to make the statement that we want the lenders who are active in our markets, especially those profile and substantive lenders, to do better for our residents. We're not turning away anything they do, but we want to see better and bigger. Because we, as the largest county in the state, have significant deposits. Our overnight deposits and our real estate deposits are fairly significant. And so as we look at how they perform, one of the things we'll be doing with the Ronayne administration is talking about how we do better together. And we have preliminarily agreed on joint support, figuring out how we encourage the lenders to do better. And we're not angry with anyone. I want everyone to be clear. We are not mad at KeyBank. We just want everyone to produce more for the people that we serve. Just that simple. Mayor.
I just noted something here because just a couple months ago there was an article in Cranes about banks closing in communities of color. And the number of branches of Huntington Bank is 57. They have the largest number of branches.
Yeah.
So, of course, access and community presence, I think, and then that results in almost 8.1. People still like the idea of going to the neighborhood bank. They know the banker. I spent years as a teller. Believe it or not.
The people when they walked in.
Right. So I worked actually in what is now the 9. But, and so people see you every week and they will tell you what they need. They'll tell you, the roof or the steps or, I want to refinance or I want to own a home. And so that relationship is really important. So I think the fact that Huntington Bank has 57 branches versus some other banks lends itself to them having access to those people and having those conversations and counseling that they can do to say, you can apply for the loan. I remember years ago there was a loan committee of something. I don't know how prevalent that is now because I worked in installment lending, but if there was a loan that was marginal, a loan committee got together and took a chance, maybe some additional documentation. And so I think having a presence in cities should then, of course, this last column, percentage of loans, deposits, loan to Cuyahoga County should go up. But as they're closing banks, and the last thing I'll say on that is Erie Bank has a new model. Of course, they're focusing on more commercial lending than residential or smaller loans. But they have a scaled-down model on these branches. The closest one, of course, is Seven Hills, and I know Bank of America is actually talking to the city of Maple Heights about doing something. But they're going to the communities that need this hand-holding, this face-to-face. And I think that's a difference. I mean, 47 branches, 1.93, it certainly doesn't lead to the fact that they have this kind of presence in communities and it's less than a 2% rate. So the fact that Huntington Bank has that many branches sticks out to me because we have one actually in Maple Heights and it's doing very well. People know that banker and they go there. And I do believe that there is, maybe not the loan committee as I remember many, many years ago, but there's someone talking to that reviewer to get that loan perhaps passed, or approved, I should say.
I want to wrap this up because
Yes.
we're at our hour, and my favorite meeting is an hour or less. There are some things we know that we shouldn't have impossible expectations of our lending partners, and at no point in time do we want any lender out there in our span of listening via the internet to think that we have impossible dreams here. What we have is the need for more and more people to be able to participate in the American dream. If you're a lender out there paying attention, we'd love for you to have more coaching of people on the importance of their credit scores and financial fitness. More coaching of people about how easy it is to begin to do the kinds of things that will help you be a better borrower or a more attractive borrower, and that there are solutions. Cuyahoga County is willing to enter into agreements that will encourage you to do more in our communities. We don't have one community we're nurturing. We have about 50 communities we're nurturing. Some of them need more assistance than others. We know that, but if you look at the numbers that we have on in this chart, in this study, you will see that we're looking not just at the city of Cleveland, not just at the inner ring suburbs. We're looking at different cohorts, about 6 different groups, and we need for lenders to begin to pay attention to the whole of Cuyahoga County and to some of the special priorities that we have. We want them to work with us. The next step is a report to County Council via the Community Development Committee. In addition to Frank doing a really scaled back version of this report.
Would be scaled back.
I would like to encourage at least 2 members of this committee to be willing to speak either right before him or right after him, preferably before him, because I'm assuming that you in 5 minutes or less will tell council why this kind of work is important, as well as the county exec. So do I have volunteers here today? Oh, that's so wonderful. Because here's the thing, if you don't volunteer, I will voluntold. So the mayors already know that. Yeah, so I have 2. Is there a third?
Madam Chair, I volunteer Barbara Anderson.
Oh, wow. That's a
Well
new
done.
take on voluntold.
And I saw Mr. Nowak's hand. So this time this is amazing. I love this kind of group. We have 4 folks. I'm hoping that your testimony will be 20 minutes or less collectively. And so that we can get to a like 10-minute presentation on the due
Okay.
diligence that you went through for us.
All right.
Um, and I do want to make an introduction before we leave. Deputy Chief of Staff Gallagher is with us today. She's a former mayor, so several of us know her from that circle. So she gets what we're doing and has a major commitment of service to the people we serve. Some of the folks who didn't get financial opportunities are her former direct constituents. And so she understands why we need this. We'll be working together to make sure that lenders understand that our depository relationships are important to us, but we also want to see those lenders work with us to do better for the people who help generate the $2 billion of operating funds that we have. So while we don't want to beat anybody up, we want to make sure they feel like this is an opportunity to do more. So with that, I want to thank you all for participating. The next, I am looking at putting us on the agenda for the 20th. Do we have room on that agenda, ladies? We started drafting the agendas for Monday yesterday.
Would we revise it?
Is it busy already?
I think we have about 5 items.
Oh, yes, we're creating a housing department. Okay, so what's our next available date for presentation on this? So the first week of April? April 4th? Okay, because I'm just guessing on the dates. Okay. All right. Then we'll look if we could save this for April 3rd.
And Madam Chair, before we adjourn, if I could just let the record reflect that Ms. Blackwell is in attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no additional comments, this meeting is adjourned.